For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Thabi Madiba. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss looking for answers about the question of betrayal. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
You must have known that this article would make waves, so why did you write it?
You know, it's the sort of thing that I've been thinking about for a long time, because it's 10, 11 years that I've been watching things that I disagreed with, but also people doing things that I believe constitute betrayal of the constituency, the core constituency the ANC purports to serve, the poorest of the poor, taking actions which rob them of that to which they are entitled, like the social grant scandal in Kandla and so forth. And for a long time I've watched these things, and I've watched people do that, but then I've also watched people provide the intellectual rationale for it, so that the public should feel that this is not just robbery, it's actually something worthy, or there are reasons why it can go through, or that Parliament can't examine it, all these sorts of things. So on the one hand, I've been watching it long before what's happened recently, and in the last year or so, a number of people have tried to put a distance between themselves and Zuma. And I'm not very convinced by these reasons. I think that if you want to say to the public, what I did was wrong, I take full responsibility for it, and I will try to make amends for it, that is one thing. And they don't owe an apology to me or to the church or anyone. But I mean, if they do say that what they're doing now is they're breaking with what they did in the past, they must identify what they did in the past correctly. Now you have someone like Posa saying, how was he to know that Zuma was corrupt? And if you look at the Sheikh court case, the judgment, Zuma wasn't on trial there, but it was found that Sheikh gave money to Zuma, and the expectation was that Zuma would use his influence to divert some things to Sheikh. In other words, the judge says it there that this falls within the definition of corruption, although in that case Zuma was not himself on trial, but it was very clear that that was a corrupt relationship. So if I was aware of that, if it's in the newspapers of the time, Posa must have been aware of it. It's not correct to say there was no... Everyone knew very well that Zuma had a propensity to deviate from the law. You have Lindiwe Sisulu saying, well, she didn't really try to stop the court case against Zuma, charges. Now, there was a committee she was chair of, which was looking into ways of having a stay of prosecution against Zuma. Now one asks, why should he not face charges? They said then the case is not strong. Shouldn't that have been left to the courts to decide? And you have two leading members of the prosecution at the time. Vim Trengove SC gave a talk at UCT, which I can make available. Billy Downer SC, who's in the prosecution, made a talk, I think, at the Middle Temple part of the bar in UK. Both of them saying that there was nothing wrong with the case. In fact, Mche himself also said there was interference in the process, but the case itself was rock solid. Now, they took it upon themselves to try and bring a stay of execution. So in other words, Zuma could well have faced charges and been in jail by now, but people like Lindiwe Sisulu and the members of the committee, Sipho Seepe, this chap Ngubane, a number of other people, not all of whom have distinguished careers, but as happens, made themselves into a committee to second guess the prosecution and to try and stop that. So they were involved in this. In the case of Cronin, it's a guy I was very close to, and I've never made a real attack on what he said. In my prison book, I have indicated disagreement, but that was 10 years, 11 years after this. I've not wanted to go and say bad things about him, even if they're true, because I knew the children when they were growing up. But now the children are adults, I believe that they must make their decisions for themselves. Now, when Cronin did an interview with the Huffington Post the other day, he made as if since 1994, monopoly capital has been the prime winner out of what has happened. Everything since then has been determined by this. He says, like, what happened in 1994, in a sense, predetermined what's happened after that. And you get the impression then that even if Zuma hadn't been here, things would have turned out like this. And the effect of that statement is to erase the qualities of the Zuma era, to make as if what was happening now was really neoliberalism and didn't include the violence, the homophobia, the state capture, all of these things. Secondly, he claims that Communist Party never really supported Zuma for the presidency. Now that runs against the facts. He says maybe they did with their body language. Now their body language is very clear. After his rape trial, after every day of the rape trial, Bladen Zimande and others would be dancing with Zuma outside there. Every court case Zuma faced, Bladen Zimande would be traipsing after him, following him from court case to the one to the next. I also quote from the website of the Communist Party. They refer to the Polokwane Spring, and Polokwane being an eruption of democracy. Now, if that's not an endorsement of Zuma, I don't know what is. So what I'm saying is that, and what it also does is that it makes as if he, Cronin, had no agency. He was just a mild figure who, as he said somewhere, should have spoken up, opposed this more fully, all of this. But he did more than comply with the election. He actually was active in the rationale in favor of the Nkandla spending. If you go and look at the National Assembly debates, as I mentioned in my article, there was this nonsense of others, but you had Naledi Pandor, John Jeffrey and Jeremy Cronin providing the pseudo-rational sort of clear, at least they put coherent sentences together to justify the Nkandla spending. So there was complicity. Now my feeling is, you must call a spade a spade. If you have done X, don't paint it as ineluctable trajectory of the onflow of capital dominance. And that was what made me unhappy with these things, and I think the public needs to know whether or not they can trust people who one day did this and the next day do something else, and they clothe it in a way which I believe is not accurate.
So are you not prepared to reconcile with those people?
Well, it doesn't arise. I'm not a priest. I'm not the TRC, and I'm not a priest. It doesn't arise for me to. I don't see any of these people at the moment. Don't have a reason to see them, and the question really is informing the public about what really happened, and not have this obfuscation that people all along never believed in this, never believed in that. But not just their body language, their actions. They consciously acted in the Zuma government in various ways to advance these things.
Thank you, Professor. That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about the question of betrayal.